Hello.
Hi Jane, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I could see you, but I couldn't hear you. I could see you, hear me. I was like, hello.
Sorry. Yes, so you should be able to share your screen now.
Yep, I've got a share screen button. Hang on. Do you want me to share it, the first screen now, or do you want me to wait?
If you just wait a little bit until everyone arrives, or just actually, yeah, we could do it now. Actually, that's fine because people can still see us, I think.
Give me a second. So that's the screen, the full one. But I can come out of that if you want to wait for people to arrive.
Actually, no, we'll stick with that for now, as it just ensures everyone knows they're in the right place.
Okay.
So yeah, for those who have already joined, we'll just wait until past, and then we'll get going.
Right. Okay. So did you say you were going to do a little introduction?
Yes, I will, just to get the ball rolling before we hand over to you and your presentation. And then I'll just do a little conclusion at the end as well.
Okay, I've run through it and it took about 40 minutes-ish, but I was a little bit fast, so, and that doesn't account for anybody asking questions as we go. So I don't know if you want, whether I go through the whole thing and then ask questions at the end, rather than, because I think if people ask questions during it, we might not get to the end.
Yeah, I think it's better to save the questions until the end. Hopefully there should be some via the chat.
So you're going to monitor the chat then? Yes,
I'll keep an eye on the chat. And then, yeah, we can come to any questions at the end.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll just give it 5 more minutes. Hopefully we'll get some more people arriving.
Yeah, people often just give it the last minute, don't they?
Waiting until lunch breaks. Yeah, once we start the presentation, I'll just mute myself and turn my camera off so I'm not distracting, but I'll keep an eye on the chat and make sure everything's going smoothly, and then I'll come back at the end.
Right. So, hang on. So you can see the main screen?
Yes, yeah.
Could you see me leave that screen and come back then?
Oh, sorry, I was actually looking at the chat when
I just went into a Word. I'm just wondering what you can see. I went into a Word document, so I'm just wondering if you could see that, or if you're only seeing that main screen still.
I could, at the moment, I can just see PowerPoint. That
main screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I was just doing something in Word, so I just want to make sure you're not flicking between the two. Let me turn my email off so it doesn't ping, because that's annoying. Okay. Right. Will you be doing any kind of screen prints of the speakers? Would you think we'll see people's faces and we can sort of see how many are there?
So if you go down to the bottom, you should be able to see the number of participants. Because this is set as a webinar rather than like an ordinary Zoom meeting, we can't actually see people joining, so it's a bit misleading.
So I can't see it on my screen.
So if on like the bottom kind of tab of Zoom, there should be a little section that says participants.
Oh yes, I've got 17. I can see that.
Click that. Yeah.
Yeah. Right, I've got that at the top of my screen. It's all right.
Yeah. It always throws me because I think there's no one there, and then I. Again, for anyone who's just joined, we'll just wait until past for everyone else to join, and then we'll get going. We might get a few people from Oxpeg as well joining because they're interested, so that will be good.
In terms of students or staff?
Staff. Okay. We should get both prospective students and enrolled students, and then there should be a couple of members of staff that I know are interested as well.
Okay. And you said you're recording this, didn't you?
Yes, yeah. I'll make a note when we start so everyone is aware, because then we can send it out afterwards. We'll just give it another minute or so. I expect people will continue to arrive once we get started, but I'm sure they can catch up. Okay, I think we'll get started now. So thank you very much to everyone who's joined already. Can everyone please note that this webinar is being recorded, so then we can send it out to everyone that signed up afterwards. My name is Anna. I'm part of the inquiries team here at the Oxford Professional Education Group. And today is the second webinar in the PR on Demand series that we're running. And today we have Dr. Jane Tonge with us. Jane is the Director of Boost Communications and Training, as well as the former Senior Lecturer in Marketing Communications at Manchester Met Business School. So she really knows her stuff. So Jane, I'll hand over to you now to take us into the world of PR and reputation management.
Okay, thank you very much, Anna. So I'm going to talk to you today about reputation management, as it says here on the screen. And thank you very much for Oxford Professional Education Group for inviting me to do this webinar today. I'm really looking forward to it, and hopefully we'll find out more about reputation together, and then at the end, hopefully have some nice questions and we can have a discussion. So let's make a start then. So what we're going to cover today, I'm going to just start by looking at what we mean by reputation, and also the role of PR with reputation, just to establish that to set off with. I'm going to consider why we need to look at reputation, so its value, and then most of the presentation is going to focus on something called the 4 pillars of reputation. So looking at how we break down reputation into these 4 key areas. I've got lots of examples of organisations who've done well at this, and quite a few who haven't done so well, shall we say. And then at the end I round off with 3 practical ways that PR could manage and protect reputation. So as Anna just said, a little bit about me, so you know who's talking to you today. So I'm the Director of Boost Communications and Training. I'm a practitioner, but I'm also an academic. So as Anna mentioned, I was a former Senior Lecturer in Marketing Communications at MMU Business School, where I was also the Programme Leader for the Master's degree in Public Relations and the Master's in PR and Media Management. And I'm also the lead tutor for the CIPR Foundation, which is run by Oxford Professional Education Group. There are some of my qualifications, which include a Master's degree in Public Relations, and also my PhD looked at business networks in PR consultancies as well. So I've got quite a good background in public relations. So let's start off by thinking about what is reputation. So let's take a look at that. So I like this phrase, I've used it many times, and I think it sort of really is spot on. You may have seen it before. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. And if you think about that, you'll do things differently. And that's a very famous quote from Warren Buffett, who's a sort of billionaire philanthropist in America. And it is very true. You know, it takes a long time to build a really good reputation. It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of effort, and one thing can spoil it or ruin it in 5 minutes. So you've got to always be not only aware of building and developing your reputation, but being very careful to protect it as well, and to make sure either you don't ruin it or somebody else doesn't ruin it for you. And that's, you know, that will govern perhaps how you approach managing reputation. It's that kind of dual role of building and protecting it, and make sure nobody else spoils it for you after all your hard work. So what do we mean by reputation? Well, essentially it's the estimation in which you're held. It can be a person, it can be an organisation. So it's how you're known, your repute, your reported character, your fame. So that's kind of general example of reputation. But it's formed by the views and impressions of many different people. It's a combination of what they think, what their perceptions are. So reputation of an organisation is formed by the impressions held by a wide range of people. So not just one person, it's what most stakeholders might think. And when we think about corporate reputation or an organisation's reputation or a business reputation, it's again, we think about this idea of perception. It's a perceptual representation of what the company's done in the past, how it's behaved, but also its future prospects, how people think it's going to act and behave. And that describes the firm's overall appeal when you think about it in comparison to its rivals. So how we perceive what it's done before and what we think it's going to do next. Now, one thing to bear in mind about reputation is it's a social construction. It's what we as human beings think and feel about an organisation. It reflects our emotions or stakeholders' emotions. So as it says here, it represents what they think, what they feel about an organisation. It's not necessarily something you can kind of put your hand on. It's reflecting our emotions. So that's worth bearing in mind. When it comes to public relations and reputation, well, if we think of the CIPR definition, reputation is right there, square and centre. Public relations is about reputation. So it's the result, as the definition says, of what you do, what you say, but also what others say about you. So it's how others feel about you, how they perceive you. And public relations as a discipline looks after reputation. It's got the aim of earning understanding, of support from stakeholders, of influencing behaviour and opinion. But that can only be done over time. So it's got to be planned. It's got to be sustained. It can't just be a one-off. It takes a lot of effort and energy to establish this goodwill and to maintain it as well between the organisation and all of its publics. So very much public relations and reputation management are interlinked, because public relations is the discipline charged with looking after reputation. So that's its job. You know, we've got to look after the reputation of the organisation or the business. And in order to do this, as we've seen in the definition, public relations has got to build that goodwill, got to create goodwill, got to create mutual understanding between the organisation and all of its publics and stakeholders to help influence those perceptions that shape people's views of the reputation. So why are we bothered about reputation? What's the value of it? Well, there's a few points we can look at here. First of all, it is intangible. It's not something you can just kind of put in a bag and go, here's our reputation. It's something you can't put your hands on, but it's a very valuable asset even so. And it means different things to different people. So if you've got a well-respected reputation, which most organisations and businesses and indeed individuals strive for, it brings lots of benefits. First of all, it can communicate your organisation's mission, your values, what you're about, what you're there to do. It tells people that your leaders are of quality, they're professional. It communicates that your employees are talented, they're experts, they know what they're doing. It tells people that the goods and services you provide are quality, high quality, reliable. And it also communicates the organisation's role in the wider world, in the wider marketing sector or in its business environment. So reputation very much acts as a signal. It signals to lots of stakeholders how attractive your organisation is to employees, to consumers, investors, communities. It's a beacon that sort of says, you know, this is who we are and this is what we stand for. Reputation's definitely got a value because it's very important to organisations, as you can see from the Watson and Kitchen quote here. And it doesn't matter whether you're a charity, a government, a business, an individual even. It's very important because it helps you reach your goals, because you need to gain acceptance and approval by your stakeholders to carry on doing what you want to do, what your goals, what your aims are. So a good reputation paves that way. It leads to acceptance, it leads to approval, and it helps organisations stay competitive, prosper, and ultimately achieve their goals. Other benefits of a strong reputation? Well, very much It helps you be competitive, so it gives you competitive advantage, which then also differentiates you from the competition. It makes you stand out from the crowd. If you've got a good reputation, you're more likely to have loyalty from your customers. It creates it, it drives it. People want to, shop with you. It builds other people's trust in the organisation because they feel like they can rely on you. And also, if people want to work for you, it attracts the highest quality employees because you've got a strong reputation. They want to be aligned with you. They want to work with you. They want to join in your mission and be part of that campaign, if you like. So we've got two reasons to manage reputation. First of all, because people are watching. Organisations are subject to ongoing 24-hour scrutiny. So we've got media interest, we've got consumers interested and online and talking about us all the time. We might have some political pressure. There's the public, the general public, there's communications all the time, and the constant need maybe to supply instant information. What this means is people are always watching us. They're always watching an organisation. They're scrutinising how it behaves and acts. And if it falls short, then that will get revealed, that will get spread across the media like wildfire. So be aware that people are watching. The second reason is because how an organisation acts, its reputation, is going to influence how the key stakeholder groups view them, how they perceive them. Remember, we said that reputation was about perceptions. So what they think about them, good or bad, how they interact with them, the type of relationship they have with them. So in other words, people are judging. They're judging an organisation's behaviour, they're appraising its reputation, and this influences and determines their actions. And so you have questions like, well, do I work for them? I'm not sure. Do I shop with them? Do I travel with them? Do I buy clothes from them? Do I bank with them? Do I invest with them? Do I go on holiday with them? We ask all these questions and we're judging and we're using our understanding of that organisation's reputation to help us make our decisions, to help stakeholders make their decisions. So it's important that we manage reputation to help influence and shape people's perceptions. So when they ask themselves these questions, hopefully the answer is yes. So there's a payoff for reputation. By strategically managing your corporate reputation, using public relations, an organisation can very much create that goodwill, create mutual understanding with its stakeholders, and then influence their perceptions, influence how they interact and support us, which ultimately leads to the survival of that organisation because we need those stakeholders to accept us, approve of us, and want to work with us, shop with us, invest with us, and so on. So that's kind of laid some of the ground areas of why we should look at reputation, why it's important, and how PR works with reputation. It's very much the discipline that looks after it. So what I'm going to look at more in this webinar now is focus on how PR can create and manage that reputation. And I'm going to focus on what's called the 4 pillars of reputation. So these 4 key areas that form reputation that we need to look after and be very aware of in our communications. And I've got lots of examples, as I said, of recent events and also some slightly older ones, but quite recent ones where we see organisations who've done well at this, but also ones where, perhaps they've hit the headlines for the wrong reasons. So what are the 4 pillars of reputation? Well, they're these 4. They're 4 key attributes that you need to develop, an organisation needs to develop to build a favourable, positive reputation. And we're looking at credibility, reliability, responsibility, and trustworthiness. And I'm going to go through each of these in the webinar so you become more familiar with them and what they mean. And they're all key. And I like to think of them, and forgive the sort of dodgy picture, it's the only one I could find, as a table. So a table with the 4 corners, the 4 legs of reputation. It's an easy way to remember this. And if one of those attributes, one of those table legs is damaged in any way, the reputation starts to become unsteady. The table starts to rock. If 2 become damaged, this table's not going to stay up. If you've got 3 or 4 of these damaged, the reputation is going to crash. So you've got to think about, how do I keep all 4 of these in line to keep my reputation upright and steady. So that's a nice model of the 4 pillars of reputation, which is taken from von Braun from Harvard Business School Publishing. So you can see it's those 4 corners, and it's an easy way to remember it, the 4 corners of a table: credibility, reliability, responsibility, and trustworthiness. So let's just take a look at each of these and some examples as well. So each pillar appeals to particular stakeholders. It's not to say that they're not all interested in all of them, because all stakeholders are affected by those 4 attributes or those 4 pillars. But theories found, and in particular, that each one appeals to certain stakeholders. So, for example, credibility is particularly important for investors, and people invest in organisations in different ways. So it's not necessarily monetary investors, but for investors, because the organisation needs to show it's profitable, it's doing well, it's got growth prospects. Reliability is particularly key for customers, not just customers, but it's important for them, because they need to know that goods and services are reliable, that they can, that they're going to be there week after week. If it's perhaps in a supermarket, the quality is going to be good, and if something goes wrong, is there a good customer service? Responsibility is important for the community. So is the organisation responsible? Does it serve the community? For example, does it protect the environment? And then trust is particularly important for employees. Not to say that other stakeholders don't need to trust the organisation, but trust is particularly key for employees. Do your employees trust you? Do you instill pride? Do you empower them? So we're going to take a look at each of these in turn. So the first one's credibility. And as I said, that's important for investors, but other stakeholders as well. And that's where we can ask ourselves some questions. Are we credible as an organisation? Are we profitable? Do people believe in us? Are we convincing in what we do, what we offer? Do people have confidence in us and our capabilities? Do we have integrity? So those are the kind of questions you might be asking yourself if you're trying to think about, are we a credible organisation? What does it mean to be credible? How do we talk about that, outside of the organisation? So let's look at a few examples, and sometimes these examples help illustrate where credibility is lacking, or whether attributes lacking, so we can see how we maybe wouldn't fall foul of the same problem. So an example you may have come across, maybe this was a couple of years ago, was with an Olympic swimmer, Ryan Lochte. And we had these headings in the media: liar, liar, speedo on fire. So an athlete loses credibility with sponsors. Sponsors are investors. They put a lot of money into these types of athletes or celebrities. The problem here was that this particular athlete had a very strong profile. He's an Olympic athlete, but he was caught up in a web of lies when he claimed he was robbed at gunpoint during the Rio de Janeiro Olympics, following an incident in a gas station where there was some vandalising. He gave lots of media interviews about that. The reputation of Rio de Janeiro was slurred, and the local people there weren't happy, the mayor and so on, because it painted a quite a negative picture of their city. But after a few days, he actually admitted that it was all a pack of lies, that he covered this up. He said this to cover it up because they were actually drunk. What happened? All of his investors, his corporate sponsors, dropped him to avoid reputational damage impacting on them. So swimwear brand Speedo ended its sponsorship. Wouldn't you? If that was the headline, liar, liar, Speedo on fire, they wanted out straight away. And then others followed suit. So Ralph Lauren terminated the endorsement, Sinan and Candela, Airweave. In the end, he lost millions of dollars in sponsorship deals. And Speedo, to kind of protect their reputation, also donated $50,000 of his fee to save the children, so to a kind of international charity, to kind of limit some of the damage to their own reputation. So we see very much an example here of credibility. As soon as it's lost, then people need to protect their own reputation. Another example you'll be familiar with, this happened more recently and in the UK, was with West Ham United and its player Kurt Zouma. So videos went on social media showing the footballer kicking and slapping its pet cat. And the results with both the player and the club have lost a lot of credibility. Instantly, Europe's largest sportswear manufacturer, Adidas, ended a six-figure sponsorship deal with the footballer. So again, they're investors. They withdrew straight away. And there's been subsequent problems. So, for example, insurance company Vitality suspended its partnership with West Ham. And you can see here a quote that they were hugely disappointed. Well, this is straight away kicking away at that credibility part of the reputation. We're very disappointed in their response because they continue to play the player despite a huge backlash and criticism for this action. The guy was fined £250,000 and he's now being prosecuted by the RSPCA. So that story is still going on, and it'd be interesting to see, what happens with other people who are sponsoring. Like you can see Betway's on the shirt there. Is this going to have ramifications for West Ham's reputation? Certainly for the players' reputation. Final example for credibility is more of a corporate example here, where you've got a large organisation, losing credibility and having that announced in the media, basically, by one of its former organisations that it's sponsored. Often these large companies will sponsor arts organisations, but here we've got Scottish Ballet announcing that it was no longer going to be in a sponsorship deal with BP because it does not fit with the dance company's Green Action Plan. So basically saying, this is not a credible partner for us anymore, and lots of other arts organisations have followed suit, basically because their stakeholders are not happy. So, following environmental campaigns by artists, by employers, and you can see the picture here, their stakeholders are not happy that these organisations are being sponsored by oil companies and the like. So, because of pressure from them, they've taken action, said, yes, we're going to end this because you're not credible, and that reflects badly on us and our reputation. So we're going to end this investment, this sponsorship deal. Now, the second of the 4 attributes, or the 4 pillars of reputation, is reliability. And as I said, this is really important for customers. Of course, other stakeholders, need to know you're reliable, but customers in particular, this is key. So they might ask questions such as, can we rely on our products and services? Do we deliver what's expected? Do we keep the brand promise? Do we provide consistent quality and availability? Do we meet and hopefully exceed customers' expectations? Do we provide strong customer service if things go wrong? And I'm sure we've all been in the situation where something's gone wrong and we're even more frustrated by how the organisation has failed to deal with our problem. Rather, sometimes that's more frustrating than the original problem. So reliability. So let's have a look at some examples here. So during the pandemic, we saw lots of organisations caught on the back foot. It was a crisis. They'd never planned for this kind of thing. It wasn't something they were expecting. And what we saw was, with the panic buying, and you see examples here of empty shelves, I saw it, I'm sure you did too, that a number of organisations had to scramble to kind of communicate with their stakeholders, especially their customers. Marks and Spencer's in particular ran numerous email marketing campaigns to reassure customers that they were still reliable, and to kind of slow down some of this panic buying as well. So they issued statement after statement saying things like, we are increasing the amount of food we have here, which is basically saying don't panic, stop buying it all, there's plenty. To meet customer demand, you can be confident the food you buy from is responsibly sourced. We're continuing to support our partners. We deliver trusted value. So these are very reassuring messages to say, look, we're reliable. You can trust us. The food will be there. It will be the same quality. It will be the same standard. And a hidden message, please stop panic buying because there's no need. And there was numerous email marketing campaigns from M&S, but also other organisations. I had lots of emails, I'm sure you did too. As businesses closed, they issued reassuring statements, just saying, rely on us, we'll look after you. If you come to our stores, this was before everything closed, we've got hand sanitizer, we've got social distancing, giving out these reassuring, relying messages that helps keep their reputation intact. That even in a time of crisis, we're still here for you. You can still rely on us. Also, through the pandemic and since, we've had very strong awareness, perhaps, of how reliable the NHS has been. It has its detractors, it has pros and cons, but it's very much come to the fore and been centre stage for quite a lot of the pandemic in terms of the healthcare it's provided and its reaction and the actions it's taken and its staff, which has led to naturally lots of thank you campaigns, lots of thank you NHS heroes, the clapping outside campaigns supporting people. So it's rolled out an unprecedented vaccination programme, made history by vaccinating the first person in the world, and then since then it's delivered over 118 million vaccines. It's also treated lots of patients with COVID, so I'm sure that figure is higher now, but over 350,000 patients and 100,000 since the start of the Omicron wave. So you've got a very reliable message, very reliable service here. You know, we're here for you, we will help you, work with us, come for your injections, come for your vaccinations, and so on. Okay, so the third area is responsibility. So responsibility as a pillar of reputation and reputation management is very much aimed at the community. Other stakeholders, as I've said, will be interested in this, but the community is particularly a target for promoting a responsible reputation. So you would ask things like, are we a responsible employer? How do we treat the local community? Do we treat them with respect? So that's where our offices are based, maybe the stores, or where our factories are located. Could be the UK, could be elsewhere. Do we help support the local community or the wider community? We're involved in any way. Are we a good corporate citizen? Are we environmentally friendly, for example? So how do we demonstrate our responsibility to the community? So one key way that lots of organisations do this, they can demonstrate their own responsibility, and I've got another slide that shows you that. But a key way that's kind of come to my attention, because this was in the news recently, was through charities. And we had the Comic Relief fundraising last week. And if you go on their website, they thank their corporate partners, and they thank their technology partners, and they thank other partners. So you've got large organisations working with, you know, national charities such as Sainsbury's, TK Maxx, Maltesers, Walkers, KFC, and so on, as a way of demonstrating that they are, you know, responsible organisations, that they care about the community they work with. They're a responsible corporate citizen and they want to give back. And so you see lots of organisations do partner with major charities. And also some will partner with those that are more relevant to their sector. So, for example, a housing association may support the charity shelter. So you have this kind of alignment of charities with of organisations with charities as a way of demonstrating their responsibility, that they are a good corporate citizen. They can also do that themselves. Now, I don't know if you've ever visited the corporate website of Starbucks, and I know people have the Starbucks has its detractors, it has pros and cons, but certainly as an example of how they demonstrate their responsibility as an organisation. If you visit the corporate website and look at the stories page, there is an extensive section dedicated to community activities it undertakes on a global scale, including work by the Starbucks Foundation. And what this does is it communicates a very strong message about its reputation, its commitment to people, commitment to communities, and it's promoting this reputation of being a responsible organisation. So, for example, here it's supporting women and girls in coffee, tea and cocoa growing communities. It's supporting Black History Month. It's supporting International Women's Day. And also on the site, there's lots of information and examples on the site. But here you can see it's got a whole section on inclusion and diversity, on opportunities, on community and all the work it does there, how much the Starbucks Foundation donates, $1 million to strengthen communities. It's given $23 million in grants for thriving communities and disaster response. It goes on. And it's, you know, at first it's impressive. Look at all this work we're doing with communities. And basically it says we're a responsible organisation, you know, we're credible, you can trust us. It does a lot to help communicate a reputation for Starbucks. But recently, I would ask the question also, are all global brands responsible citizens, and how do they react in times of crisis? Now, I put this on an example because this is something that's happening, again, unprecedented. These organisations didn't plan for this, they didn't know this was going to happen, so they've had to react quickly. And we've seen lots of headlines and stories and a lot on social media about Western organisations, pressure growing on them, especially the big food and drink giants, to pull out of Russia due to the invasion of Ukraine. So the question is, has their, not all of them, but has some of their hesitation in doing that has it threatened their reputations in any way? Has it made them appear less responsible organisations? There may be very practical reasons why they've not done it, and some of them have talked about those. You know, they have hundreds of stores, they have thousands of employees. It's not something you can just stop overnight. They've got contracts, they've got legal ramifications. But even so, you know, should they have made more quicker decisions? Well, some people think yes, and you know, they put pressure on them. So we had particular organisations picked out, like McDonald's and Coca-Cola, criticised on social media for failing to speak out about the attacks, failing to pull out when other people did. And then we saw this trending on social media: boycott McDonald's, boycott Coca-Cola, and just a couple of examples there of images that trended on Twitter. You know, quite stark messages. You know, do you want your logo included in these kind of messages online? Excuse me. And then in particular, you know, you've got high-profile people speaking globally about your actions. So you've got Ukraine's foreign minister telling CNN, you must withdraw, and that actually naming companies. We are upset to hear companies like Coca-Cola and McDonald's remain in Russia and continue providing their products. So, you know, are all global brands responsible citizens? Maybe it hasn't harmed their reputation, maybe it has. Maybe are the more important things to think about than reputation in these times of crisis. But it's certainly something that's caused a lot of speculation, a lot of media coverage, a lot of questions have been asked about how these companies are operating. And, you know, most of them, I think over about 300 or 400, have now pulled out of Russia or suspended operations anyway. So that brings us to the fourth area, which is trustworthiness. So the fourth of those key attributes or key pillars of reputation that an organisation needs to be aware of, needs to communicate about, needs to promote in terms of keeping that table, if you like, those four legs of that reputational table steady. So trustworthiness is particularly important for employees, but also other stakeholders as well. You know, other people need to trust the organisation. But for employees, you know, you might be asking these kind of questions. Do people believe in us? Can they count on us? Do they believe we are good, honest and truthful? Do they believe what we do is safe and reliable? Are they sure we're not going to harm them? We're not going to cause them any harm? Can they rely on our abilities? Are they confident that we're going to do what we say? And the final one, do we keep our promises? You know, it's really important as a way of maintaining, establishing trust, is keeping promises. So let's look at a few examples where that's not happened. So the first one is one that's hit the headline and which I know has been being talked about today on in Parliament, is P&O. And I've picked this heading out because it just made me laugh out loud. What a bunch of anchors. So there's been a huge furore over the sacking of 800 staff by P&O Ferries and plans to place them with cheaper agency workers. In fact, I just caught a little bit of the Prime Minister's questions, and they're pushing for, you know, stronger employment laws because of this particular issue. You know, this shouldn't be allowed to happen. This shouldn't happen again. So it has ramifications. But, you know, you've got a really serious story here, which kind of very much damages P&O Ferries, P&O's reputation. Staff told in a video call, this is your last day. Employers given no warning, no consultation with unions or the government. And then lots of people coming out condemning it. So a shameful act in the history of British industrial relations. MPs calling it callous and disgraceful. The business secretary put his finger on it. We're talking about trust. Has actually said P&O Ferries has lost the trust of the British public and given business a bad name. And certainly when I was hearing radio coverage of it in the week, I heard people online ringing up saying, well, if that's the way they treat their employees, I'm cancelling my ferry booking. I'm going to book with a different ferry company, which is a disaster. You know, your customers, your consumers are abandoning you. You know, it's as well as treating your employees in this way, you're really cutting your reputation, those legs of that table, you're just cutting them out from under yourself. So we also saw a plethora of media coverage with these really inflammatory headlines, but very emotional, betrayal, appalling, talking about people being removed in handcuffs, whether that turns out to be true or not, but it's still, it still fuels the story. And then, people like the Archbishop of Canterbury tweeting that it's inhumane and unethical. This company is really being slammed from every quarter, and its reputation is kind of in tatters at the moment. So it's got a heck of a job to do to rebuild that if it can. And also sort of people like the Greater Manchester Mayor saying it's a gangster practice. So it's been hotly debated, and it's still a controversial issue. And it'd be interesting to see how that story plays out in the media and what does actually happen to P&O afterwards, whether it can recover from this kind of monumental disaster in terms of reputation and reputation management. So another example you may have come across, I think this might be one of my last examples, is Brewdog. And they've been doing a couple of things recently which is damaging their reputation, particularly in terms of employees and losing employee trust. We saw an open letter circulated on Twitter with 61 former workers alleging that they'd cut corners on health and safety, which is really bad news. If you think about your reputation, we need to be able to trust these organisations. Do we want to go and drink in these bars if this is, if they're not sticking to health and safety rules? It doesn't live by the values it talks about, and there's a toxic culture which leads to sort of mental illness. Being treated like a human being was sadly not always a given for those working at Brewdog at LA, so quite damning condemnation. It did apologise, although, as The Guardian pointed out, these claims struck at the heart of Brewdog's reputation. And it's been followed up by a documentary by BBC Scotland Disclosure Team. They've done some investigating. There's now a documentary we can all watch with former staff alleging inappropriate behaviour by the chief, Mr. Watt, although Mr. Watt's lawyers deny the allegations. So that's an ongoing story as well that you can keep an eye on. But to compound the problems at Brewdog, not only have they got problems in terms of employee trust and they're losing credibility with their employees and their staff, they're also having problems in terms of their marketing and PR work. So trust has been further affected because Brewdog's hit the headlines because the ASA's upheld a number of complaints over a particular promotion. You may have come across this, the golden can promotion, which is kind of a Willy Wonka style. You had to find the golden can, and they promoted it as a solid gold beer can. Fortunately, it was not a solid gold beer can. It turned out to be gold plated instead. Customers have complained and winners have complained, saying it's basically not worth anything at all. So very disappointed, and they've been misled. Basically, he told the BBC, Brewdog are meant to be there for the little guy, and this is two fingers to their customers, who are the ones who've been taken in by this. So quite, again, it's very damaging to Brewdog's reputation. And who did Brewdog blame? Brewdog blamed its social media posts as mistakes that were a result of miscommunication between its marketing and social media teams. But I would ask the question as, who told the marketing and social media teams that it was a solid gold can? That's come from somewhere, but maybe we'll never get to the bottom of that. But you can see Brewdog's got fighting its reputational battles on a number of fronts here. Internally, in terms of employees and employee trust. Externally, it's disappointing consumers and leaving them angry and feeling misled. So again, reputational issues. Will it be able to rebuild? Will Mr. Watt still be there in a year's time? Remains to be seen. So how can PR manage reputation then? What can PR do, public relations practitioners do, to help manage an organisation's reputation? So I've got three ways it can do this. First of all, not to be unexpected, I'd suggest you promote the 4 pillars of reputation. So raise awareness of the good work your organisation is doing with each of the 4 pillars. So we've been through them, haven't we? Credibility, reliability, responsibility, and trustworthiness. This is going to take time, but as we saw at the beginning, a strong reputation delivers an awful lot of benefits. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, demonstrate. So it's not just about communicating, you have to demonstrate as well. So these are not empty communications, they're actually based on action. So demonstrate and communicate you are a credible organisation and that people can have confidence in you and your capabilities. Communicate your reliability. People need to know that you're reliable, that you provide consistent quality, availability, and that you not only meet but exceed customer expectations, and it's about ongoing communication of that. Raise awareness that you are a responsible employer. and that you support the community and the environment, and that you treat them with respect. And for example, you can see how Starbucks has got a huge Starbucks Foundation, pushing this reputational aspects of how it is responsible, what it does, how it invests in other people and other communities. And finally, demonstrate and communicate your trustworthiness to employees and others. So you need to demonstrate that your organisation is good, it is honest and truthful. What you do is safe and reliable, that you're not misleading people, that this is actually a reliable, safe company. And explain how and where you do keep your promises, because that establishes and maintains trust. The second thing I think practitioners can do is avoid negative reputational association. I'm not sure if you've heard of that term before, reputational association, which can be good. We can partner, as we saw people partnering with Comic Relief is a positive reputational association. But there's also a downside. We have to be careful who we work with, what their reputations are, who you collaborate with, which celebrities, which influencers, which sponsors you partner with, because any negative activity by them is going to impact on your reputation, and it's going to affect your credibility, your reliability, your trustworthiness, your responsibility. And that's why Speedo dropped Ryan Lochte instantly, and why Adidas dropped Kurt Zuma immediately, because those actions were going to negatively impact on their reputation, which they've invested an awful lot of money and time and effort into building and maintaining. So you're going to drop anybody that's going to destroy all your work. So a couple of examples of reputational association, people's and brands and companies can suffer from this when people do kind of take action that was not expected, and they need to take swift action to protect themselves. So there's lots of examples out there of this, and we've already mentioned two with Adidas and Speedo. But Helen Mirren, a celebrity face of L'Oreal, did them no favours when she admitted their moisturiser probably does F all, which didn't go down very well, and not what you want from your kind of celebrity endorser. And then Michael Phelps, Olympic swimmer, was dropped by Kellogg after a photo leaked of him inhaling from a marijuana pipe. So, you can't control the actions of your celebrities. You can choose carefully who you work with, your influencers, your sponsors, but sometimes they can still say things that are unexpected, or do things that you didn't expect them to do. And then you have to take swift action if that happens, because it's going to damage your reputation. And finally, my final sort of piece of advice would be, don't torpedo your own reputation. And we see this happening a lot. But public relations has got an opportunity. Public relations practitioners, when they work with senior managers, they can be instrumental, I think, in preventing what might be seen as self-inflicted reputational damage. Public relations, if you're not aware of it, it's what's called a boundary spanning activity. So basically, it acts as a link between the organisation and the outside world. So think of it as kind of crossing that boundary. It's communicating on behalf of the organisation to the outside world, but it's also bringing in understanding and knowledge and awareness. So it's like the eyes and ears for the organisation as to what the stakeholders are thinking, are doing, their perceptions of the organisation, and how its actions are going to be perceived. And remember, he said right at the beginning, reputation is all about perceptions. So public relations practitioners therefore got a great opportunity to be able to counsel and advise organisations on how their planned actions are going to impact on their reputation, impact on how people perceive their credibility, their reliability, their responsibility, whether we can trust them or not, and head off, hopefully, any blunders that may be unwittingly, let's be generous, unwittingly self-inflicted by an organisation on itself. And here's an example of where that didn't happen. So recently we saw this over the winter of Eon, blasted for sending out socks to customers during what was a pretty cold winter. So this is an example of an organisation just shooting itself in the foot, to be honest, damaging its own reputation needlessly. There was no need for this, to be honest. It's not a big reaction to something like the war in Ukraine. This is sending socks out to customers, but it was very ill judged. And the energy supplier was called upon to apologise, and it did. It said it was incredibly sorry. It was a misstep because it sent socks to 30,000 customers, encouraging them to turn the heating down at a time when people are really starting to worry about the cost of living, very high bills on the horizon, lots of people worrying about, is it heating or eating? They didn't need to receive a pair of socks from an energy company telling them this is how you can, stay warm. And we got a lot of reaction, especially on social media with this. Elderly auntie's just been sent these pitiful pack from her energy company, polyester socks. Are they for real? Shame on you, Eon. So somebody blasting you and saying shame on you is definitely a detriment to your reputation. And then this type of marketing stunt feels like a slap in the face to households panicking about the soaring cost of energy. So it didn't read the mood correctly of the stakeholders, of the general public, and there was a backlash online and in the media as well. So hopefully, maybe this didn't happen here, but public relations can step in and say, actually, that's not a good idea. This is not going to be perceived well. This, let's not do this, because, the ramifications are going to be really severe for our reputation. Okay, so I think this might be my final slide. Yes, it is. Don't kill your own reputation is perhaps the message here. Remember, a good reputation is very hard won. You've got to look at how you can build that credibility, reliability, responsibility and trustworthiness, and look for genuine ways to build and protect it. So we'll leave you with what you don't want is this. Brewdog solid gold beer can, misleading the public and firing your employees, and headlines like what a bunch of anchors. The kind of thing you are looking for, and I saw this on the news this week, is that kind of thing. So David Beckham has Instagram account to Ukrainian doctor. He's got 71 million followers, and he handed it over to her to use. So you're looking for, don't shoot yourself in the foot. Look for opportunities where you can genuinely build and protect your reputation. Okay, that's me done. Thank you very much for listening. Has anybody got any questions?
People should just be able to put any questions in the chat or use the Q&A function. We'll keep an eye out if any come. And if no one has any at the moment, then you can just drop us an email later on instead. I'll just put that in the chat for you. But we'll just wait and see if anyone does have anything. Oh, lovely. We've got a question from Louise Jane. Her question is, what is the difference between marketing and PR?
That's a big question, Louise. Is that an essay question? That sounds like something you do in an exam. What's the difference between marketing and PR? I would say marketing is very much focused on consumers. It's got a clear focus of communications aimed at the consumer, whereas public relations has a wider remit. It's relations with all publics, which will include a consumer, but public relations also targets residents, shareholders, the media, employees, local community. It's got a much wider remit. So I think one way to think about the difference is who its target markets, who the communications are aimed at. That's quick. That's a quick answer rather than an essay answer.
Lovely. We've got some more questions coming in now. One here from Anna, which she's asked, what would you do and say if Putin asked you to manage his PR at the moment?
I'd say no. What would you do, Anna? That's a very good question, Anna. I'd tell him to stop fighting the war in Ukraine and resign and hand himself over to war crimes tribunal, probably. So he probably wouldn't hire me.
Seems like a sensible response. We've got here one from Islam. Yes, can we have the PowerPoint? Yes. Over the next few days, we'll send you guys over the PowerPoint slides and the recording for this. So that should come towards the end of this week. We've got one here from Lauren. She says, at her organisation, they've recently struggled with reputation management via social media, especially Facebook. They've got a lot of negativity on the projects they work on, and when they try to engage or respond, it tends just to fuel the fire. Do you have any tips or tricks for managing this?
It's very, I mean, I've not got an easy answer for you there. I think what a lot of organisations do is spend a lot of time building a strong reputation so that it kind of heads off some of this negativity. So if you've got a really strong base to build on already, but you're never going to stop all the criticisms. You're never going to not have criticisms of what you do. I suppose it's how you deal with that, whether you thank people online and then say, you know, can we take this offline and have an offline conversation where we'll, you know, that's one kind of tends to be, so that the argument or the criticisms don't kind of escalate online. You end up having an argument with somebody online. It's like, thank you very much, we appreciate your comments, can we take this offline, here's, you know, here's an email, could you email me, and I'll try and explain a little bit more about what we're doing and why we're doing it. You're never going to get rid of all the negativity, I'm afraid, because there'll always be somebody who doesn't agree with what you're doing. But you can, if you've got, I think back to the Starbucks example, if somebody was criticised and say you do nothing for local communities, you can just point and go, look, here's a huge amount we do. You can't really say that, you've got no basis in that. So perhaps it's thinking, where's our reputation bank that we can then turn to and go, okay, you might not be happy with that project, but it's the first, but look, we've done all of these, and with this project we're trying to do something similar. So it's, has your organisation got that sort of strong reputation to fall back on? And if not, can you build that so that for future projects you've got more people on site, because they can see that you're genuinely doing this and you've been doing it over years. You know, you've got quotes, testimonials, images, you've got, you know, you've got that story ready of this is actually what we do. So, you know, you can kind of put the other side, set the story straight. But I don't think you'll ever get rid of, somebody will always criticise what you're doing. You just got to say, well, this is what we're doing, can we take it offline and have a chat about it?
Great, thank you, Jane. We've got some coming through the Q&A as well. Someone's asked, if you were looking to assess your organisation's reputational risk, what approach would you take?
It's reputational risk in terms of, I might need a little bit more about that.
Well, sorry, that's all we've got.
That's all you've got.
That's just from someone who's written it anonymously. If
anonymously, yeah.
Clarification,
yeah.
Just put that back down and we'll come back to that one.
I suppose a question might be, look at those 4 pillars, because where are the risks? If you see, that's those slides, I put questions on each one. If you're answering no to some of those things, that's a reputational risk. Do we keep our promises? Are we credible? Do people trust us? You know, if you look through those, if we're saying no, not really, no, probably not, no, then that's, think of that table, that leg of that reputation is not there. So your reputation is always going to be at risk. So you have to think, well, how do we build that? How do we make our organisation stronger? What do we need to do? And it might be, it's not always things that PR can do. It's going back to the organisation saying, look, we've got a terrible customer service and we're getting loads of complaints online. We've got to do something about this. We're getting hammered, our reputation's being, what do we do? Do we need to work with internally? How do we get that sorted? So perhaps it's, if there are problems and risks, it's bringing it back into the organisation as that boundary spanner and saying, you've got to sort this, you know, internally, we've got to sort this as a company because we're getting hammered by it. So it'd be looking at each of those pillars and saying, you know, are we steady? Are we doing a good job? Or is there something that we're not doing well? Is there something that we could attend to, that we could correct?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. We've got another one here asking, what are the possible career paths for PR?
Quite a few, really. There's internal, well, not internal, sorry, in-house or consultancy. So most public relations people will follow one of 3 paths, actually. They'll go and work in-house for an organisation, and most public relations people are employed in-house. Or you could go and work for a consultancy, an agency, and specialise maybe in consumer or business-to-business PR, or a particular type of PR. So some agencies are set up just to look after sports PR or fashion PR, or environmental. So you might kind of, you know, ear towards a particular type of agency, and then you might set up your own business. But perhaps once you've had experience in either in-house or consultancy, or a bit of both, if you can do that. And then think about, you know, within those, if you were in-house, you can work your way up to being, I don't know, director of communications, head of communications, or head of PR. In an agency, you probably end up being, you know, director, or even running your own agency. So, you know, the sky's the limit but it depends which route you take, whether you go in-house, consultancy, or set up your own business.
Yeah, that's makes sense as well. We've got an interesting one here from Candice, who's asked, how would you suggest a financial institution goes about reshaping its reputation after it had no choice to make a hard decision to save the organisation about 8 years ago, because nothing's been done to reshape it so far?
That's a very intricate question. That might be something I help you with outside of the webinar. I think a quick answer would be to look back at those 4 pillars and think, where have we not done a good job? Where have we fallen short? Because, you know, if we had to make a hard decision, which organisations do people still think we're reliable? Do people still think we're trustworthy? If not, how do we come back from that? What do we need to communicate that we're still reliable in these other ways, that we've done this since, that we are, you know, community minded? You know, where have you fallen short, and what steps can you take to kind of put that in place? And again, I say it might not just be PR's remit. PR might not have the power to put those programs in place, but it can certainly work with, you know, managers, chief execs saying, we've got to do something here. What projects can we do? What changes can we make that will help counter some of this negativity we're getting at the moment? How do we put our reputation back on track? And I would look at those 4 and think, well, where have we fallen short on this? If you weren't sure, you could always go and talk to stakeholders, maybe do some focus groups, find out what their perceptions are and where in particular they think you're falling short, and, you know, then think, well, how do we address that? What do they think we could do? I mean, you know, so perhaps do some research before you make any decisions.
Great, thanks, Jane. We've got another interesting one here from David. Asked, if your leader has a different reputation to the organisation and goes off-piste, e.g. Tesla and Elon Musk.
Yeah, that's very tricky. That is a tricky one, because you've got somebody at the head of the organisation perhaps pulling in a different way. I mean, ideally you want the two to kind of go in the same direction, don't you? So you're stuck there really, because the person at the top's the person with the power as well. So it's whether you're on that kind of level, you're at a senior management level where you can talk to senior people and say, you know, how do we manage this? Because, you know, we might be coming back to that shooting ourselves in the foot business. You know, no matter how much work we do here, it only takes one wrong word to the media and all that good work's undone, and we're back looking like we don't know what we're doing, or we're having to firefight all the time. That's not an easy one. Perhaps it's more about talking to senior managing directors, the others, you know, people that work at a similar level, and saying, you know, how do we manage this, because it's actually harming who we are and what we do. I mean, sometimes having a charismatic leader can actually, it can do a couple of things. It can distract, you know, the media attention on them, and the company can just get on with doing what it's doing. But it can start to have a negative impact, and then I suppose the senior people are going to have to talk to that person and say, this is detracting from our mission, from our goals. What's going on? What's happening? Why is this happening? It's difficult though, especially if that person's like so charismatic, so well known, such a global figure. I haven't got an easy answer to that. I'm sorry, David. If I did have, I might be the comms director at Tesla.
We have another one here from Razvan, who's asked, how can we measure reputation levels? Is there a scale? Do we use surveys? Essentially, how do we quantify it?
Yeah, there are a number. I've not touched upon reputation measurement in the webinar today, but there are different ways. There's something called RepTrack, which is used with international businesses. You might want to go look at there, and they do surveys, and they have sort of various elements that they'll go and talk to people about. But there's definitely ways of measuring reputation. They all kind of boil down to going and talking to people really, and finding out, as we said, you know, what are the perceptions of the stakeholders, because reputation is very much about perception. So how do you perceive our trustworthiness? Are we credible? Are we reliable? So it's about talking to people really. So it can be surveys. How often, I suppose, is up to you. You might do it every 6 months. If you got about to launch something, find out what your reputation is before, launch it, run it, and then maybe 6-12 months later, find out, you know, has that helped our reputation, damaged it, what went well, what didn't go well, what do people like, what didn't they like. But there are some measurements. So RepTrack is one of them. Maybe go and have a look at.
Great, thank you. I will just say we'll try to get through everyone's questions. But if we don't have enough time, just email us and we will get back to you. Marcia, who may well have left now, has asked whether the webinar will be sent out. Yes, it's being recorded and we'll send it out to you later this week along with the presentation slides. So just a few more questions. We've got one from Louise, who's asked what your favourite brand is, Jane, and why do you think they're particularly good about how they manage PR?
Oh, that's really tricky. I don't really know. I've got a favourite brand. I just kind of like watch. I think what I do is I like keeping up to date with the news and the media and seeing who's doing a really good job. And then also what you tend to get reported more in the media is who's not doing a good job. So that's why it's a lot easier to kind of find examples of the people that are not doing well. I suppose if I was, of the examples I've got, I think I really was impressed by the Starbucks community pages and the work that they do. And it seemed to me, although I'd come across it before, I spent a bit of time looking at it. And although I don't particularly go to Starbucks, and if I do, I'm not a particular follower of the brand, but I was impressed by that website, and it seemed very genuine, and there were lots of work, and they've been doing it for a long time. And I just thought, and it was very diverse and supporting different communities. And I know people detract from Starbucks and there's problems with it, but I just thought that they're either trying to do something good or they are doing good work. And I thought if more organisations were investing that much, then perhaps, there would be more of this community-minded focus. But yeah, I suppose I just like the ones that don't go well. They make me laugh because you just want to go, why have you done that? Why have you sent socks out to people when it's cold, you idiots? Excuse me, but they're just like, and the P&O stuff at the moment is just jaw-dropping. I heard it on the radio and I just thought, no way, you've just completely shot yourself in the foot. What are you thinking? So sometimes they're the ones that kind of make you stop and gasp and just think, no. Where are your PR practice? Where's your advice? Where's the counsel? What are you thinking? So it doesn't quite answer your question, Louise, I'm sorry.
We'll probably make this one the last question from Michelle. She's got a couple. She's asked, how can she start incorporating her company's PR into their marketing communications to help repair the damage done from poor service to some of our oldest customers?
It's about building relationships again with those customers that have had the poor service. It's about reaching out to them, I suppose, and showing them how things have changed, how, it's probably starting off with an apology, but then saying, but look what we're doing now, and saying, we're moving forward, we're doing this. It depends whether they're still around enough for you to go and talk to them and say, why don't you help us change things? Because if you help us with your views to change things, then that won't happen again. So you can involve stakeholders in the changes happening in the organisation, which is good because then they can see you're actually doing something about it. But then also demonstrating to them, this is what's different, this is how we've changed, we've done this, and keep communicating it though, because people miscommunicate. You have to kind of communicate it over and over again. We're not what we used to be, we're now new and different, and we do this now, and we do this now, and we do this now. But usually you kind of start off with, if you've made a mistake, it's holding your hand up and saying, we're sorry, we got it wrong. I've had emails about that, sorry, we got it wrong, it's this now. Thank you for bearing with us, thank you for your patience, thank you for sticking with us. We're going to change and maybe you could help us. So I think it's being quite honest with people, but then demonstrating, the differences, the changes that have been made, and that they are real changes. It's not just we're saying this, but actually it's all the same. They actually are real changes. But you put there about asking research. I would start with research and finding out, what do we do wrong? How do we let you down? We're so sorry. We won't do that again. We're different now.
Great. And then, sorry, just the very last one from Michelle. How could you spread awareness of those PR pillars across large organisations to ensure that the in-house stakeholders start embedding these in their daily activities?
How can you spread awareness of pillars across to ensure? Right, I suppose you'd have to communicate with them about what the pillars are and apply them to their own types of work or organisation. So I put kind of general questions on my slides, you know, are we this, are we that, whereas you could write those questions, you could write your own questions, you know, what does it mean to be credible for your organisation? Do you do this, do you do that, do you do the other, and actually have a bit more of a checklist, so that they can see, you know, are we actually, if we meet all of these, then we're being more credible, or we're being more trustworthy, for example. Whether they can embed them in their daily activities, I'm not sure, but you can certainly communicate about what the pillars are and how important they are, and sometimes by example show, look what happens when we get it wrong, and it only takes somebody in marketing to send out socks, and look what happens, you know, it wasn't a deliberate, you know, ploy to upset people, but look what's happened. So it's just kind of having that awareness of how your actions impact on the perceptions of stakeholders, and how you're perceived as credible, responsible, trustworthy, and so on, and then how that impacts on the reputation of the whole organisation. So even small actions can have repercussions on the bigger company.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Jane, for the fantastic presentation, and then for answering those questions. That was really helpful.
That's okay.
So I'll just wrap up quickly, because I'm aware we're going over a little bit. On top of her various corporate commitments, Jane is also one of our tutors here, teaching our CIPR courses, which is the Chartered Institute of Public Relations. Lots of you have already expressed interest in studying a CIPR course with us, and some of you will probably already be enrolled as well. So if you are interested in the PR courses that we offer, please just get in touch and we'll be happy to help. I've put our inquiries email address there in the chat, as well as the link to our webpage on our CIPR courses. Other than that, you'll get the recording of the webinar over the next few days. And if you do have any questions specific to the webinar, just get back in touch, and we'll be happy to help as well. So I think that's everything for today. Thank you again all for joining. We hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to hopefully hearing from some of you soon.
Okay, thank you very much, Anna, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. And if anybody wants to contact me, those are my details below. And if you would like me to come and talk to your company or organisation about reputation, maybe some of those areas we've covered today, then drop me a line.
Great. Thank you so much, Jane. And thanks everyone again for joining. Hope you have a lovely rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.